Welcome to the Aid Market Podcast, where foreign aid partners connect to learn about key funding trends and market insight. The podcast is co-hosted by Aid Connect Data, the pipeline and market intel software for USAID partnering, and Connected International, the leading USAID partnering support consulting firm. Now, here's your host, Mike Shanley.
Hello and welcome to the Aid Market Podcast. We have a special show today. Jamey Butcher, the CEO of Chemonics International, is our guest. Jamey, great to have you on the show. I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights on the international aid market and key trends that we should all look for.
Great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So Jamey's been at Chemonics since 1998 in a variety of different roles. Jamey, you and I first met in 2009 when you and now your chief of staff, Martha Van Camp, hired me as an associate to join your Europe and Eurasia team. I remember our first meeting went to the Starbucks when Chemonics was over at 17th and H, went to the Starbucks across from the World Bank, had a great chat there. I couldn't have known at the time how great of a place that was for me to really start and accelerate my career in international development, not just the training, obviously the market expertise and working at a leading development firm, but really the people. And prepping for our show today, I just realized how many friends I still have from Chemonics. So I just want to start by saying thank you for giving me that opportunity to really launch my career.
It's amazing. 2009 doesn't seem like that long ago, but it really has. Time has rolled by. And congratulations to you on this podcast and all of your success. Something I think our industry really needs. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Mike.
Appreciate that, Jamey. So let's jump right into it. Chemonics. Right. What do you see as Chemonics' role in the global aid ecosystem?
Well, we talk about how time has passed. Chemonics is 49, had its 49th anniversary this year. Next year will be in our 50th year, and I myself, like you said, 1998, I celebrated 25 years at Chemonics this year, and I think throughout that history, our organization has really served primarily USAID and grown with USAID into a multitude of sectors. At this point, we are working in around 100 countries, and we have around 6,500 teammates in those countries. And we continue to see USAID as our core client, and I see that well into the future as well. I think USAID is a real leader in the international development space. And as we move forward, we're really growing from that foundation. I'm here in London right now, actually, and I was here a couple of months ago. We just celebrated our 5th anniversary of our London office, where we've started working with FCDO, and at this point have been able to put together 25 projects in 26 countries and build on the USAID Foundation we have. And then with that, now we're looking at just a wide variety of other opportunities. As you probably know, about 8 or 9 years ago, we were awarded PSM, the Global Health Supply Chain Activity, the large USAID-funded supply chain that covers HIV/AIDS, malaria, reproductive health, maternal child health. And through that, we've learned a lot of lessons, and we've even created a subsidiary called Connexi that is now working to generate new client base with respect to supply chain and that important work. And it's really a reflection, I think, of I go back to USAID's leadership. I was at Administrator Power's inaugural address, sort of laying out her agenda at Georgetown, and she talked about three big crises that we're facing, and we all know them: climate change, global health pandemics, rise of authoritarianism or declining democratic values, and the threats that are coming from that, including disinformation and other things. And when we think about, as an organization, those crises that we're all facing, I mean, they're more than just international development at this point. These are humanitarian crises. They face everybody, all of humanity. And so as an organization, we've really dug into that evolution of our space, and looked at where we fit and what we think is important. I mean, some of the statistics, some of the challenges we're facing are extraordinary. By the end of the decade, the estimates are that 1.6 billion people are going to lack access to clean water. As much as 15% of Africa's GDP, all the countries of Africa's GDP may be reduced because of climate change. And as it stands right now, food insecurity is unfortunately growing rapidly. It's tripled in the last 5 years. Nearly 400 million people are food insecure. And I don't know about you, I was, really enthralled by the Olympics. And I bring it up because I have mixed feelings about the refugee team. I'm really excited and happy that we have an inclusive space where we can have a team for refugees. I'm also sad that, over 100 million people have been forcibly dislocated from their homes. And if you think about, going to any stadium or big event, that's 1 out of every 80 humans. I mean, it's an extraordinarily large population. So we're looking at a number of converging issues, challenges, crises, whatever you want to call them, that all of humanity faces. And as we think about our rich history working with USAID and so many places around the world, with so many extraordinary teammates, partners, and addressing the issues of our time, these issues of our time right now are growing and they're rapidly becoming, going beyond international development. And we've really, because of that, embraced a pivot as an organization, not only as international development, but really as a leading sustainable development organization. And in that, looking at the sustainable development goals as a marker for how we can contribute as we continue to grow, and examining our place and our contribution to those SDGs, and really challenging ourselves in terms of the thinking around how, as an organization, we might make the most meaningful contribution to the realization of the SDGs as possible, and work with the wide variety of implementing partners and others who are contributing to that broad set of goals in the most meaningful way that we can.
Now, given that context, obviously part of your role also is leading an organization, growing Chemonics. You talked about the success of opening the London office 5 years in. That's actually a very impressive amount of new projects that you all are implementing. How have you approached leading growth at Chemonics, which was already this very strong brand name in the USAID market when you took over as CEO? How do you approach leading Chemonics' growth and expansion from the USAID market to a global firm with offices in London and working with other partners, I assume also maybe private sector partners around the world?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think first off, when I came in as CEO, it was in April of 2020. So there are two aspects. There's a sort of strategic look at the future that we all throughout the organization continue to share. And then there's the practical. We had a pandemic, all of us, that we were facing. We were on lockdown and moved to a virtual office overnight. I think that, interestingly, if we had been asked to do that without a crisis at hand, it probably would have taken years and a lot of consultants, but we just moved rapidly like everyone. And one of the first things I put out as CEO was just a note to everybody saying that, we're not going to do anything radical by way of cutting back on staffing or anything like that. We're going to band together and we're going to work together to figure it out. And that's one of the things that I really love about Chemonics, and it's a hallmark of our organization. And we did, like everyone, we put our heads together and we figured out how to create business continuity, care for our teammates, and make sure everybody was in a space that, they could take care of their families and themselves and then work in that order. And then we focused our attention on how can we deliver our support and our service to all of the communities and partners and everyone else that we're committed to. And we did that very rapidly within the first couple of months. And I think from that experience, there's a sort of practical can-do sort of esprit de corps that has come out. And it's set against the strategic, which is, I talked about the SDGs and the reality that by the end of the decade, if we look at the funding gap for the SDGs, we're talking about $4 trillion. $4 trillion isn't going to get made up by, our core clients, USAID and FCDO and other donors. Their contributions are essential and their leadership is essential, but that funding gap is going to have to be made up by private sector capital. And the good news, I think, and as we look at this, is that last year, and actually in 2022, impact investing exceeded $1 trillion. And so some of the deficit is offset by the fact that there is a real awareness that is coming out in across boardrooms, certainly in the US and UK and around the world, that we have to mitigate the sort of risks associated with environmental, social governance, ESG, and accentuate impact in the work we do. And I think Chemonics is in a unique position, along with a lot of our other peers, to help organizations to bridge that divide. We've spent a lot of time working through how we might contribute, looking at impact investing. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I'm here today in London, talking to our Mobilist team, who's leading some of the impact investing advisory work with the UK government, drawing from other work we've done with CFDA and Moldova FTA and other programs that are funded by USAID, and really looking at how can we take all of the lessons that we have, whether it's advising on impact investing or even managing grants under contract. We were looking the other day, we have a sum total of more than $750 million of grants under contract in our portfolio. So as an organization and organizations in this space, we all have a rich set of skills and capabilities to contribute to solving this major gap that exists. What we're finding is we go out and look at the impact investing space and looking at how we might mobilize private capital, is there are a number of areas where we see significant gaps in the market, where our work naturally highlights areas where we think we can add extraordinary financial and impact value. And so what we've created is another subsidiary alongside of Connexi and our UK business line called Chemonics Capital. And through Chemonics Capital, what we're endeavoring to do is really begin working on venture building, investing seed capital of our own in areas where we think we can have a transformative impact, and then soliciting and bringing private capital into those ventures so that we can continue to grow them and reach populations that need to be reached in order to really impact the SDGs. Our first example, which we launched earlier this spring in Manila, is called Higala. So Higala, it means friend in Tagalog. And so Higala is a venture that we've started with the intent of addressing the digital financial divide in the Philippines. So if you look at the work that's been done over the last couple of decades in the Philippines, it's been extraordinary. It's really been transformative in terms of digital banking and access to finance. And yet there are still, out of the 110 million Filipinos, 60 million unbanked or not participating in the digital economy. And with Higala, what we're attempting to do is create a Zelle of the Philippines, if you will, an interbank transfer system, and then a bill pay system and other add-ons that will allow us to continue to bring in people that are not currently able to participate because of structural barriers in the system that exists, and in which we think we have a unique insight into addressing. This is just one example. There are a handful of examples that we're getting started with. We're partnered in the case of Higala with Tolino Venture Labs out of LA, who have also created financial fintech products for inclusive finance. And so as we move forward through our development of Chem Capital, what we're really excited to do is look for those partners that have unique insights or capabilities that we can harness in order to mobilize private capital and start to take a chunk of that gap away, and sort of also experiment a little bit as we go and see how we can scale, provide a tremendous financial return and impact so that we can get others following on and begin to move the needle, which has to happen. It has to happen fast.
As you're growing your work in that impact investing space, are you finding that there's a significant, plenty, maybe enough capital out there, but that people look to Chemonics for the trusted you've been implementing for literally decades in emerging markets, frontier markets, that they look to you and trust your insight into finding and maybe identifying donor funding opportunities to de-risk or create better investment conditions? So I guess two questions there. Do you feel that to reach those SDG goals with that trillions, mentioned $4 trillion, that there is sufficient capital? It's just a matter of people that have the capital and those decision makers helping them better identify projects, or is there a shortcoming there? And then the second piece is Chemonics is a big role there. So you mentioned bring in your own funding, but really is it that those local connections, that local insight, that local expertise in identifying projects that are set up for success?
Yeah, no, great question. I think we're finding in the last few years as we've been researching this and reaching out and networking and trying to put together, a sensible business plan, is that there's a real gap, right? There's just today we were talking about 22, 23 trillion in investment capital that's currently available. And as I said to you, only a trillion is going into impact investing, and that's worldwide. There's a real gap. And so recently we were on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley, the fabled Sand Hill Road. And we met with a number of VCs and talked about the ventures that we're starting. We did our pitch decks and we talked, we asked for advice. We picked out VCs that had in their mission statement, global change, impacting the world, those sorts of statements. What we found is that predominantly, most of the VCs said, well, we love what you're doing. The problem is we really invest domestically in the US. And so there is a gap. We asked a lot of questions why, and it's familiarity. There's a perception gap. In Singapore, on the other hand, there are VCs that are more forward leaning when it comes to Philippines, Southeast Asia. And so money is out there. In that case, the gap is really the total obtainable market. And I think the sum total of what we're seeing is that, yes, we have a role. Our peers, certainly Chemonics is just one of many, have a real role to play in helping to bridge that gap, provide access to many of the donor programs that exist for guarantees, right? De-risking, for one thing. Another thing, looking at the local environment and providing, access to that environment and essentially opening it up from the perception and also the process point of view. How do you not only put your money in, how do you get your money out of these markets? What is the regulatory environment? Obviously, corruption comes into the discussions at times. Things like that are practical that may easily be addressed, but certainly with investors that don't have a lot of experience are looking to trusted partners to help to navigate. And I think that really is a very perceptive point, Mike, that the Chemonics Internationals of the world and others like us actually have a real role to play in facilitating the capital that's available coming into frontier and emerging economies where it hasn't traditionally flowed. And that's, we're looking at these ventures as a way to provide return to our shareholders first and foremost, but we're employee owned. And as a CEO, that's my obligation. And also fulfill our mission. We are mission driven across all of our business lines, and Chemonics Capital certainly a part of that. but also create a demonstration effect as well. Maybe take some of the hard lessons and be able to share them, band together with like-minded organizations, figure it out, and unlock access to that capital. And individuals that have, by their own right, a lot of knowledge, a tremendous ability to look at business models, dissect market entry and go-to-market strategies and financial and business planning and everything else that goes with building ventures, but bridging that know-how into those emerging and frontier economies where that capital is desperately needed and where the SDGs and the gap with SDG funding exists.
So as you wrapped up those Silicon Valley meetings, were you, I don't know, demoralized? Oh no, there's a ton of money here, but this is where I don't know how we're gonna like show them the opportunity. Or were you, and being an optimistic person too, were you optimistic, hey, there's a lot of money, they're interested, we just, maybe it's that demonstration, we got to make a couple of these work and show them the ROI on it? What was your feeling? Was that a kind of a brick wall non-starter there? Or did you see some cracks in the wall or some opportunity to unlock that, and maybe share your answer in terms of what can all the other organizations globally working on aid projects do to demonstrate the I don't know, the investment opportunities to the private sector to try to attract some of that capital?
Yeah, no, I mean, I came out of the meetings as an optimist, and honestly, we followed that visit with a visit to Singapore, and we've been here in Europe, meeting with family wealth offices and faith-based investing groups and others, and there is a lot of interest. It's not that there's, and by the way, I think the groups I met with Silicon Valley are a bit of the outliers. I think there's a lot of interest. There's money flowing. I think that there's a landscape with all of the tools that exist. Certainly, I always think of the donor community as the investor of first resort. I mean, coming in and de-risking opportunities. You look at organizations like Africa Invest are doing tremendous work in unlocking private capital and putting it to work throughout Africa. And organizations like that are growing. I think it's for me, the optimism of knowing the interest is there, and then the intellectual curiosity I think we all have, and thinking through, okay, well, if that puzzle, if that interest is there and the need's there, how can we unlock that puzzle? How can we solve the puzzle together? And I we've been at this for a little less than a year, really, and I think that we've already made a lot of progress. I'm very optimistic for Chemonics. I'm bullish with respect to our ability as a industry to achieve the SDGs. I think if you go to the GIN or SOCAP, you see a tremendous amount of interest and insight and know-how that's coming together to solve this puzzle. So, I mean, we're a very modest piece of that ongoing activity. I sit on the board of the Extreme Tech Challenge, XTC, and their mission is really to take technology organizations and entrepreneurs and bring them into emerging and frontier economies and solve that puzzle. That way, I just stepped off of the board of Unleash, which is a nonprofit out of Denmark that Chemonics has played a very instrumental role in supporting and creating a essentially angel investor network where we've provided dozens of angel investments over the last few years. So there is a lot of activity and a lot of promise, and I am very optimistic about this space and our ability together, not just Chemonics, again, our modest effort, but all of us in figuring it out.
Switching gears a bit to the innovation and work in prepping for this, and we have an upcoming show with one of your colleagues as well, more on the AI innovation side. As many organizations do, Chemonics talks about innovation, data. How do you differentiate Chemonics's work in that area? How do you make sure that goes, from beyond just a buzzword, which maybe everyone even has to just say we're in, no one's going to say we're the uninnovative partner, work with us. But what does that really mean to you? And how does that play out internally at Chemonics?
Well, I think that it's really interesting, Mike. We work in a variety of sectors, whether it's health or supply chain or energy, private sector development, or you name it. We endeavor to dive in and make a difference. When we look across that portfolio of sectors and countries and projects, there are some capabilities that are in almost every project. And so we've taken the time over the last couple of years and really asked the question, what not only differentiates Chemonics, but what do we have in our set of capabilities that will allow us to do the work we do in increasingly impactful, efficient ways at scale? And I think it's that scale question that, again, I go back to Administrator Powers when she was doing her address at Georgetown. She talked about scale quite a lot. We have to be able to solve problems at a community level, country level with our projects and our teammates at Chemonics and other organizations like ours. Of our 6,500 teammates, 95% are from the communities where we work. And that's where the solutions happen. Those projects are like labs. They develop solutions, they deploy them, they test them, and many have an extraordinary impact. But we've got to take those solutions to scale. So when you think about our work, for instance, I mentioned the supply chain work we do. I had a chance a while back to go to Uganda, and near Entebbe, we visited an HIV AIDS clinic, and there was a family there. And I think about this quite often because at that time my kids were much younger, and one of the young kids in this family that was at the clinic was running around the field and heading towards a road, and I just couldn't pay attention to what was going on because I kept being distracted. And luckily, his older brother went out and grabbed him. And so I started talking to his older brother and spending time learning a little more about their family. His name's Joseph, and he's one of 6 siblings at that point, young family, visiting a medical clinic we supported. He happened to be HIV positive, and that was the reason for their visit. But he's one of 27 million people in sub-Saharan Africa, right? That our supply chain provides health commodities to. So, I could think about Joseph. His needs, which range from access to healthcare, certainly, but also education and aspirations that he has for his life, job security and starting his own family and everything else that we all believe in and want. But we also have to take into account that set of needs at scale. And so when we think about this, the problem of solving issues or challenges at scale, we began looking for the capabilities that we have inside of our organization that we can use and begin to foster and incubate. And we've landed on 5. So I've talked about mobilizing private capital. That is number one and essential. In addition to that, our portfolio has a lot of applied technology that ranges from our work in supply chain, where we're using drones and advanced satellite imagery and data analytics and other aspects of applied technology in low resource settings. All the way to using those same drones in Moldova and Philippines for forestry surveillance and agroeconomics as well. Just a wide variety of applied technologies that are being used every day to create solutions in the communities where we work. Data analytics, I mentioned, data understanding, but not data from the standpoint of Mel and our typical use of data, but really getting to the point where we can unlock the question of knowing your customer. Who are the customers? Who are the people we serve? That's a third capability. The fourth is really working with mass media. We call it mass culture, sharing ideas, opportunities, ways of doing things that change behaviors and approaches across wide audiences. And we have in Zambia, we had started a soap opera called Love Games that was imported from South Africa. We brought in a soap opera producer, and it's all about bringing up subjects around safe sex and relationships and things of that nature. And now it's still running after, I think, 10 years. We have in Ukraine a few different movies that have reached box office status and top of the box office status, really surrounding Ukrainian unity and identity. So that fourth area of mass culture. And then the fifth is training, working on supporting not only our teammates and people in our industry, but also all of our partners in learning new skills and upskilling and continuing to evolve as things evolve. So a bit of a long answer, but when we think about where does Chemonics create value and how do we see the future, I think it's through those five capability areas. You mentioned a colleague you're going to have on later, Saeed Uri, who's leading our Impact Lab. We were able to put together a business plan, and this year we started an Impact Lab. And the role of the Impact Lab is really to look at all of our projects, the solutions that we're creating around the world, and then cultivate them, bring them back, and create a scale accelerator, we call it. We started this year with 6 teams that we brought in, and it's everything from augmented reality tools that are being used in classrooms in Moldova, all the way to I mentioned advanced data analytics for better delivery of malaria medicine in Nigeria. So these 6 project solutions that we brought in and people competed for are going to be brought into the Impact Lab, the scale accelerator that we've created, really with the intent of taking the solutions that work and asking how can we then create a space where those solutions can be then brought to new programs. Maybe they can be brought into Chemonics Capital, and we can attract private capital to proliferate them that way, or any other way that we can reach that scale that's needed in all of the spaces we work.
Now I'd like to zoom in a little on the USAID market. Obviously, the foundation for Chemonics' growth, still a core client of yours, and far and away currently the largest bilateral donor in the world. Having been at Chemonics since 1998. Over that time, maybe over the last decade, what have you seen as some of the most important developments? You mentioned the administrator's speech maybe a year or two ago at Georgetown, maybe a little longer than that. You've seen multiple administrators, multiple administrations. What do you see as the important developments that have come about in the market over the last decade?
Yeah, I mean, the last decade, I can think all the way back to, when I first started in 1998 and the evolution of our work. I mean, one of the most obvious things that has happened is that we've become much more connected over the last 10, 25 years. And I mean, that's obvious, I think, to everybody, but the impact is profound on the work we do. I mean, when I first started, and I know it's ancient history now, but we had like a daily email that went back and forth between the project office and the support team in Washington. Now communications are happening, fluidly between all of the different teams, and knowledge is being shared with the Chat GPT and AI tools. Our teams are rapidly adapting and adopting these technologies to do incredible things. And so that connectivity, I don't think it can be discounted. Because of that, I think we've become a lot more decentralized, which is a great thing. I mean, when I started as CEO, we've had a tradition at Chemonics of having breakfast with the CEO or lunch with the CEO, and it's always been a kind of in-person thing. Because of the pandemic, we luckily were able to put it online, and now our time that we have with our executive team and our leaders is really inclusive of all of our global teammates. And because of that, I think that inclusion then breeds much better work, connectivity, faster solution sharing and innovation, and just a wide variety of wonderful things. We recently came out with a short 10-minute documentary about innovation, if you will, or a solution. By the way, I think you're right. A little innovation becomes kind of a buzzword. And in fact, when we wrote up the Impact Lab business plan, I was really struck by the fact that we didn't really use the word innovation much at all. We've really broken it down into what are the practical things we need to do to provide better insights and solutions for our teams around the world, and then continue to work to scale. One example is in 2016, we were awarded a UN award for an app that we created called Lawin in the Philippines. And it was for forestry surveillance. So it was essentially a geospatial tool that forestry officials would go out and use. And they would look at incursions into the forest, and they would note them on a map, and they could look at the broad view of the forest and the areas they were meant to conserve, and then do better planning and more efficient work and do a better job of conserving the forest. It's since been adopted nationwide. But I think more importantly than that is our team in Bangladesh then adopted that tool. It went from the name Lawin, which is a bird of prey, I think, in Tagalog, to SMART. It's a SMART technology, which has an acronym. And then most recently has come to Colombia, and our team in Colombia has adopted that technology. But that's over 8 years, right? From 2016 to 2024. I think as the Impact Lab continues to ramp up and as the connectivity between our teams continues to increase, those kinds of adaptations are going to happen faster and faster. And we will achieve that needed scale when we find solutions that work. And I for one, I think that's a tremendous opportunity that has arisen with our USAID work over the last 10 years, and that USAID has really taken advantage of, I think, through the open, flexible tools that they've used to really push that kind of knowledge sharing and exchange.
And it sounds like maybe a few decades ago, that innovation might have been a bit more top down from the DC office. Here's the innovation of the field offices. The examples you shared were being from a more decentralized setup, that one project office learning from another project office, that decentralized setup. Are you seeing that as creating more opportunities for that organic innovation to come about in the ecosystem?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, most everything we do is not from Washington, out. It is the project teams. I mean, we just won a Digi Award, which I'm really proud of. Our Moldova FTA team and our board member, Doina Nister, presented on it at a recent board meeting. In that, it was essentially a fintech tool where they worked in Moldova to connect small businesses with investors. And they've had tremendous success. I think since 2019, they've had 280 investors invest something like 3.6 million. And that tool has really worked in a space where there was a gap that we never would have figured out if we were sitting here planning, you and I, or any of us. It has to be, in that case, our Moldovan team. We have a number of those kinds of examples where in Sri Lanka is another example. I mean, if you talk about the $4 trillion gap with the SDGs, 2.2 trillion, we believe, is in the energy sector. And in Sri Lanka, we had a SID Innovation Award for a solar-powered battery exchange that was created in Colombo. And doing that we were able to address really a financial issue, which is how we get gig workers to take on electric vehicles in doing their deliveries. And one of the major issues was the cost, the upfront cost. They were able to drop the cost 60% by having these battery exchanges and creating a different, purchasing program. And as a result, it won an award. It's super complex, and they were able to pull it off with local partners in both cases. Figuera is the name of the partner in Moldova. In Sri Lanka, that multiple partners had to come together. None of that could have happened unless we had our teams working at doing what they do best, creating solutions. And our job is really to support them in every way, and then not put up any roadblocks along the way. And with that, again, I just look at the landscape of 110 projects in around 100 countries, and all of these solutions that are happening all of the time. And I'm tremendously excited about the Scale Accelerator program, where we can bring these teams in and help us understand what they've done, and then begin to genericize, the components of all of the work that's done, so it can be redeployed that much more rapidly around the world in settings where there are some similar challenges that are trying to be addressed.
One of the other major trends, obviously, is localization. We had recently on here Sarah Rose, who with USAID in the administrator's office, leading some of the localization work there, talking about localization. Yeah, she got in the numbers and how they're measuring it, but it almost, my takeaway was it's more about inclusion and not exclusion. It's about bringing more local partners in, bringing a localization perspective. Even a few years ago, I was at a CIDC event with Administrator Power speaking. I'm not going to say she said this was localization, but when she talked about localization, she actually suggested a Chemonics Moldova project. It's a Chemonics project in Moldova, you got a local COP, all local staff, local STTA, all that. Does it matter where the invoice comes from, or does it matter who's actually designing and implementing the program? So in that context, Jamey, I'd be interested in your take on USAID and their localization priority.
Yeah. Well, look, I think localization is the right thing. It's been happening slowly and incrementally over time. I admire Administrator Powers and her the goals she set out in Georgetown. I think it's the right thing to do from the standpoint of setting targets that we all should be striving to achieve. How we get there, I think there are a wide variety of options. There are all kinds of business models. We worked in Bangladesh at creating a franchised health system, Smiling Sun, and learned a number of valuable lessons in how to use a franchising model to really localize, quality healthcare. Recently we worked with Medical Access Uganda Unlimited, who is one of the first organizations to bring ARV supply chains into Africa to treat HIV/AIDS. Ugandan organization. Our new biz team worked with them to help develop, their capacity to put in winning proposals. They've won an IDIQ and 4 task orders. That's a tremendous success, and I think those are the kinds of successes that range everything from the actual service delivery partner all the way to the implementing partner, and everything in between. One of my, most, I think, touching, if it's the right word, moments came at a board meeting where we had our partners from the Syrian Civil Defense Organization, better known as the White Helmets, who we've supported for 10 years, come in and have a final presentation to us as a partner, because in 2023, USAID began directly funding the White Helmets. And those are 3 or 4 totally different examples of the right thing happening in our space in different models and forms and formats. And I think it's on all of us to keep working to create models, business models and delivery models where we can support USAID and other donors in meeting those localization targets. Like you said, I also think that there's another side of it as well, which is, we have Doina, I mentioned, and Fernando on our board, our chiefs of party in 2 different projects that are board members. We're really moving to try to take the most inclusive approach we can at incorporating all of our teammates into the work we do, from our project offices all the way to our board. And I think in that, there's a shift that needs to also occur where when projects are ending and we're having the natural life cycle of a project, opportunities for sustainable development professionals continue to exist, and people are able to pick up that next opportunity and continue to advance their career so that we can continue to build a professional class of teammates, former teammates, partners, and others in every country where we work, so that the trajectory of that development can continue to speed up. I think the one piece that worries me a little bit is that the pace of change is just increasing exponentially, and we have to figure out with localization and the sort of ecosystem that we're creating how we keep pace. And so I do think that that's an important component that we all need to work on, which is how can we take the natural project life cycles that we all are a part of, and then embed tools in those life cycles so that our teammates and colleagues can continue their journey after the program ends. One quick thing I'll tell you that we've done that I'm proud of is we were working on the supply chain project when I was in 2017 and 2018 as a team lead. We had a real demand for graduate level supply chain courses. And so we partnered with Arizona State and their business school, Carey School of Business, and what is a top 5 supply chain school in that business school. And we've created a mini master's program. What it is 3 courses that are accredited at a graduate level that are available online. And what we said is they have to be accessible, affordable, appropriate, and accredited. And that was our criteria. ASU really made some major adjustments in order to make that happen. I don't know if there are any other programs of that type. There are micromasters and things like that, but these programs that we've developed, these mini masters, and now we have a leadership management mini masters and a data for development mini masters, they allow you to get 9 credits that can be then applied to a master's degree. And beyond that, the other thing that we insisted was that if people took the program and they were able to graduate from it, they wouldn't have to go through the TOEFL exam and all of the other ridiculous things that you have to do to get into the master's program. You can earn your way in. And the expectation at the beginning in 2017, 2018 was based upon Arizona State's extensive online education system that about 60-65% of the participants would graduate. And the worry was we're going to work across multiple countries, so it may even be lower, and there'll be a lower demand. So we basically built a program for 100 people with a baseline of we expect, based upon Arizona State's experience, 65% graduation rate. We immediately had 3 cohorts of over 100 each. We ended up with nearly 400 people in the first set of cohorts, and we had over a 90% graduation rate across 25 countries. Wow. The demand is there, and the opportunities are there. What we need to be doing is putting together the tools so that all of our colleagues around the world have access to accredited trainings and other things that are meaningful to them as they continue to go through those life cycles of our projects, and that localization goal that we all have can really be then meaningfully impacted as a result. And that's just one little example, and there's so many others out there, but it really is, to me, an exciting time. And there are so many great opportunities that are coming out of the push to meet those localization targets that were set a couple of years ago.
You touched a little bit on one of your concerns. As you look forward in the market, what are some of the other concerns you have in the donor aid funding market over the next few years?
Yeah, we're in the middle of a unique year where something like 49% of all of the population on Earth is going to the polls, and 64 different countries are doing elections. And I think the elections, there's a short-term concern there that progress that we're making might get interrupted. I'm not concerned on the longer term, but I think there's, the elections and the ongoing democratic process is so important, and a concern that it's preserved, and that the integrity of all of the elections, and not just in the US, UK, but everywhere around the world, is really preserved, and we're not backsliding. And you can see some of the unfortunate things that have happened in Venezuela and Bangladesh and other countries where we are seeing strife as a result of elections. So I think in the short term, there's some of that concern I have. In the longer term, Mike, I think the big issue right now is, with when we were in Silicon Valley, the one thing in these different VC meetings that everybody's saying is, does your technology have AI? If not, we're probably not going to invest in it. AI right now is sort of the big focus of venture capital. What will come of that is what we're already seeing: tons of tools that are really useful and increase productivity and change the job market and things like that. What I'm concerned about is that if those tools are too focused on high resource environments and not low resource environments, that the divergence and gap is just going to widen. When we think about even like a practical thing, in our industry, everybody's looking at, hey, how can I do my work more efficiently? That's awesome. How can we use AI to do work more efficiently, to create better impact and better quality? Even if we achieve that, all we're doing is improving on the existing processes. We're not democratizing the technology. In other words, we're not talking yet about putting it in the hands of communities and people in low resource setting and frontier and emerging economies. And that worries me. I think the hope I have is that we will figure out ways to unlock solutions like the ones I've mentioned that will proliferate, and that in time, localization will be less about the process we use to distribute aid and more about the choice and productivity and ownership of the customers we serve. And I say customers, sometimes people kind of turn their head and ask, well, what do you mean by that? We say beneficiaries, I think, in our space. I hope in 5 years that we'll be across our industry calling the people that are at the receiving end of our support customers, either teachers or students, lawyers, doctors, pharmacists, whomever we work with, are seen through the lens of any other individual who should be provided choice, right? Like maybe grants programs of the future are less about, competing organizations that provide the grants and more about the people that are the recipients of the grants having choices. Maybe, our industry continues to evolve to a point where we can really understand aspirations and goals, and we can transfer productivity and ownership in ways that are meaningful through this proliferation of AI and other technology. That's the hope. The fear is that does not happen because we fail to unlock the power of these tools, and it stays in the hands of the few instead of getting into the hands of the many.
Pivoting from that, I want to hear your thoughts on the future of work. In our prep, and you mentioned a little while ago that when you came in with the COVID, there was the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
That would have been a multi-year, probably multi-million-dollar process of consultants and this and that and piloting different groups, and you work from home and you work from home. You just had to do that overnight. As you're looking down the road 5 years, what do you see as the future of work in terms of organizational structure? How will development organizations, NGOs and contractors be structured? And maybe share a bit of your thoughts too on those leading these organizations around the world, local organizations, partners in Europe, small businesses. What would your, advice, suggestion, framework be for them to think about in terms of what they or you be doing now to be positioned to be an effective development partner 5 years down the road?
Yeah. I think, the future of work, it's interesting. It's a lot of what we've touched on today. I really believe in the power of solution creation in the communities through our local professionals and partners. I think that is going to continue to grow and proliferate, and that's a great thing. I mean, I think about our Ukraine Agro project. It's working on food security and supporting Ukrainian farmers. We just recently provided a $22 million grant. It was the largest in our 49-year history for an ag co-op called Zenovi to provide seeds and fertilizer and other ag inputs. That is, to me, a representative of a future that I think we should all strive for, where our partners and our local teammates are really driving the agenda and implementing. They're the front facing part of our implementation. But that's critical in Ukraine, because I think the other piece of it then is the interconnectedness of all the work we do. Supporting agriculture in Ukraine is important to ensure food security around the world. And so increasingly, I think these solutions that we're creating are having cross-border global impacts that we may not even be fully aware of. And as we're harnessing then those solutions and proliferating them in new environments, adapting them to new challenges, I'm hoping, and what we're trying to do is speed that process up so that we can go from the solution that's sustainable and lasting in the community to a solution that is then proliferated through multiple communities to meet the scale of the global need. I think that can only happen through this increased connectiveness that we've talked about, through adapting technologies in meaningful ways, through looking at the people that we work with and serve as customers and understanding their goals and aspirations, and really involving them in the process of transferring productivity and ownership, through trainings that are meaningful so that our sustainable development professionals that we all work with throughout the world have meaningful opportunity to continue to build their careers. And then lastly, by mobilizing private capital in emerging and frontier economies and other low resource settings where it's desperately needed for us to be able to realize the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals. That's a short-term 3-5 year goal that I believe we're on the path of realizing. It will have, if we get it right, meaningful impact for generations to come, and people will not even know so far into the future, people won't even know what was done. And if we get it wrong, there are a lot of disastrous consequences in front of us. The stakes are really high. And I appreciate the opportunity to express, some of our opportunities and approaches at Chemonics. We're one of many in our industry and in our space that are working hand in hand to try to figure it out. And because of that, I feel hopeful that we will achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, if not by 2030, sometime in the near future. But it's going to take us all working together to really mobilize that private capital and harness those opportunities we've talked about this last hour in order to make it a reality.
So as we wrap up here, I'd like to ask, so what? Maybe it continues from that, Jamey, but what's the so what key takeaway you'd want to leave the audience, again, of development organizations globally, the donors? What's that message you'd like to leave them with?
Yeah, it's just the central role that I think all of our donor community, all of our implementing partner community plays in ensuring that we are able to reach the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals. I don't think that USAID and other donors particularly take the credit that they deserve for making the progress that we've made to date. And I really do think that they are the foundation for us to be able to ensure a brighter future. And again, I am optimistic and bullish on the future because I know just how determined and committed everybody is in our space throughout the world. And I can see these changes that we're a part of that are really beginning to truly decentralize and create local opportunities that can be then scaled globally, in the wide variety of areas that they need to be scaled.
Well, Jamey, thank you so much for taking some time to share your insight with us. You could connect with Jamey on X, Twitter at Jamey Butcher, Jamey Butcher. Also on LinkedIn, and of course, learn more about Chemonics' important work at chemonics.com. Jamey, thank you very much. This was a great conversation, and really appreciate you sharing your insight with the global aid market.
Loved it. Thank you again, Mike. Congratulations again on all of the success. Really appreciate everything you're doing.
Great. Thank you very much, Jamey. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Aid Market Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and connect with Mike Shanley on LinkedIn to stay updated on the latest USAID funding trends.